Attention! Attention class! Today we are going to be learning about book cover design. I hope you've done your homework. There will be a quiz later. Hello, bookish beauties! Welcome to Tuesday! This week on Tuesday Talks, we are discussing what do you look for in a book cover design. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, not only because I have something like 15 years of graphic design experience, so I do know a little bit about what I'm talking about, but I also often see very poorly designed book covers, and it breaks my heart. I like things to be pretty, and I like my book covers especially to be pretty. There are 5 main things that every good cover has to have in order to do its job properly. And the job of a book cover is to sell the book, or to at least interest the reader enough that they pick up the book, maybe turn it over, find out something about the book, but in the end, to get somebody to read that book. It is the first thing that people see about the book. It is its product packaging. The cover must match the tone of the book. This was one of the things that people said about the cover for Red Queen, with the dripping blood, that it made it feel like the book was going to be a lot darker and more sinister maybe than it was. In some ways, I do agree with that assessment, but I feel like the book kind of got a little dark toward the end. Because they decided to go with a silver background and keep it bright, it definitely helps to lighten the tone some. But I think because that book deals so much with the blood color and with blood itself, and there is an awful lot of death and war and really dark things happening, I think it actually fits the tone of the book pretty well. But beyond that, another thing that the cover needs to do is have some kind of a hint at the main conflict or the overall story of the book. A perfect example of a beautiful cover that tells absolutely nothing about the story at all is the Shatter Me books. I know that they made me interested enough in the story to take a look at them, but I just finished reading the trilogy and the 2 novellas that go with it, and I have to say that the covers, which is basically an eye, really has nothing at all to do with this story. Now, if Juliet's powers had somehow, come from her eyes or had something to do with sight, it would have been perfect. But it was about her skin and strength. I'm really not sure how they came up with the idea to do the eyes with the crazy, funky eyelashes, but it really does not say anything about the story itself. Because of that, I really don't think that they're good covers for those books. They are beautiful, but they don't fit the product inside. A good cover also needs to fit the genre. You should be able to glance at a book and have an idea of where it fits into not only age range, but also what type of book you're getting into. I came across the book Inkheart because I was using it as a comparison for a novel that I have recently been sending out in query letters. Just from what I've been told about the book, I thought it was YA or maybe even adult. And as soon as I saw the cover, I thought, wait a minute, this looks middle grade. I checked with a friend, and sure enough, it is a middle grade book. Certain genres especially have certain elements that have to take place. When you're dealing with something like chick lit, it's gotta be cute and fun or it's not gonna get the right message across. I'm sure you've seen romance novels. All of them have some kind of skin couple-y thing happening on the cover that gives you some hint about what kind of romance story it is. Fantasy books tend to be a little bit darker and grittier. There's usually some kind of a sword or a crown involved or somebody wearing armor. Sci-fi books almost always have some kind of element of something that's either scientific feeling. Like the program covers have a very stark scientific sort of laboratory feel to them. Cinder is a great example of this one too, with the cyborg foot. I absolutely love that cover. I actually, with that series, kind of feel like the rest of the books in that series don't have the same, just something extra. They're beautiful covers, but the cyborg foot was really what grabbed you in Cinder, and Scarlet and Cress and Winter, they just don't have that extra little awesome element that let you know that there was something different about these books. The next thing a cover has to have, and I see this done poorly so many times, especially when it comes to self-published books, and it is tragic, but the title has to be the clearest, most obvious, most easy to read thing on the book cover. If you can't read the title, hello? Right underneath that, the author. The author's name needs to be big, it needs to be readable and prevalent. It has to be right there. Most good book covers will have a huge clear title, huge clear author's name, and there is no guessing whatsoever about what this book is called and who wrote it. And of course, the last thing is it has to be interesting. If it's a boring cover, if it's poorly composed or poorly put together, it's just not going to gain the interest that it needs. Some examples of covers that I don't think are done really well. Besides Shatter Me, which I already mentioned, I actually really do not like the cover for Daughter of Smoke and Bone as much as I absolutely love that book. The cover is not the right tone. I don't feel like it says enough about the story. Everything about that story is so... I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like vibrant and alive, and the world is incredibly unique, and you have this cover that's really dark. It's got some girl with kind of a feather mask. I guess it's supposed to be Karoo, which really doesn't make sense because she doesn't have feathers. She has blue hair. I just think there are so many things in that book that they could have used to make a really interesting, beautiful cover, and they didn't. It's really a shame because there are so many visual elements in that book. I don't understand how they didn't pick like just one and do something awesome with it. Another book that's really popular right now, All the Bright Places. I don't know a ton about this book, but based on the cover, I'm gonna guess that it's a contemporary, maybe even borderline literary type of book, but the cover itself is just kind of boring. Looks like there's some kind of post-it notes on there. It immediately made me think of another cover for the book Then We Came to the End, which actually makes sense to have post-it notes all over the front because it's all about office life, and that cover is done really well. But in All the Right Places, the post-it note looking things kind of fell out of place. It makes the title really spaced out and disconnected from itself, and there's really nothing about that cover that makes me want to pick up the book and find out more about it. Now, on the other hand, there are some covers that are done exceptionally well. One great example would be Matched, and the entire Matched trilogy has these bubbles and a girl inside of the bubble. These are still one of my favorite book covers. Pretty simple cover, there's not a whole lot going on, but even within the simplicity, it tells you so much about this world. First of all, we have this girl who's trapped. And that's exactly what's happening to the main character, Cassie, in this story. She feels trapped by the world she lives in. She can't get out of it. The dress that she's wearing is the dress that she wears to the ceremony, and it becomes a somewhat important symbol in the book because they're not allowed to have these fancy dresses or fancy things. Plus, it's got this really cool shimmery effect. There's spot coating to make the bubble shiny where the rest of it is a matte finish. And all of it just makes this cover so interesting, so well done. When you look at the rest of the series, without even really knowing that much about the book, you can tell that the next one, she's making some progress. She has broken the bubble. She is starting to get free of this world. She has given up the fancy dress, which was sort of part of the way things were done in her world. Still got the awesome shimmery shiny thing happening. The last book in the series, we can see that obviously, and I haven't even read this book yet, but I can see that there's going to be some major changes happening. Another really good example, and these have become so iconical, they've been mimicked so many times, it's ridiculous. If I see another cover that's black with a symbol in the middle. The Twilight covers have become extremely iconical. They are really simple, but there again, they tell something about the story. The very first cover has hands and fruit. You get the feeling that it's somewhat of forbidden fruit, which is exactly what Edward is to Bella, and Bedward. And Bella to Edward. As the series progresses, so do the covers, and on New Moon, where you have this flower, which is sort of something beautiful, it in a way symbolizes to me the relationship that it was just starting to blossom, and things got turned upside down. Literally, the flower is upside down. There are pieces falling off of it, which is sort of made to give the impression that it's blood dripping, so you know something sort of sinister is happening, and of course, that's exactly what is going on in that book. The next one, again, they've used this same kind of red that's been going on in all of the covers. We have just a simple ribbon breaking, which I would assume is supposed to symbolize Bella and maybe even her heart breaking as she tries to decide between Jacob and Edward and has to make the final decision, and there's a lot of breaking that happens in that book as far as hearts go. There's a lot of tension, which string and ribbon can also represent. So there again, I think it tells you a lot about the story without really saying really anything about the story. I mean, there are no vampires, there's no overtly like dripping blood or anything that you see on a lot of vampire books, but it's a very powerful image. Breaking Dawn even more so. I actually did read something about this that said that the white, I don't know, oh gosh, I don't know that much about chess. Is this the queen, maybe? It's supposed to represent Bella and how she has kind of moved forward. She's become a very important piece, and as we know from the end, it's sort of her ability that saves the day. So there again, tells you something about it. White is now the dominant color, so we kind of get the idea that things have changed, and they have. A lot less bloodshed happening at the end of this book because they've moved on into their happily ever after. Another cover that is super simple, really doesn't have a lot going on, is The Fault in Our Stars. There's really not much to it. I mean, we've got a couple clouds and some text. It does fit the genre because this is a contemporary book, so you don't have any of the elements that would make it feel like it's fantasy or anything like that. It is a rather bright color, and even though the subject matter might seem dark, this is actually a really funny book. You do have the clouds, which symbolize sort of like the dreaming, the whole idea of the sky. There's a lot of dreaming and sky themes that happen in that book, so it fits really well. It has become such an iconical cover that you see it everywhere. You see it written with the okay, okay. You see all of the different quotes in there. There is so much artwork out there that has some kind of element of this clouds or just the color scheme. This is a great example of something that is super simple but done so well. One more I want to mention is The Darkest Part of the Forest. This is sort of the opposite of the simplistic approach. This cover has a lot going on. If you notice, the title is huge. It fills up pretty much all of the cover. The author's name is big. You can read it super easily. And this is one of those covers that you can spend a lot of time looking at, and the more you look at it, the more you see little elements. There are little bugs and flowers mixed in there. Of course, you have kind of the bigger butterfly. It fits the genre well because it definitely doesn't feel like something that's just a regular, normal, everyday forest, and this is not. This is a fantasy story. It's really not a particularly dark story, so I'm glad that they did keep a lot of white and bright colors in it, because if they would have made it dark, it would have felt much more sinister than it was. And really, so much of the story was just kind of fun, but it's one that has so many little layers and little things happening with all of the different characters. You've got a lot of different plot arcs happening. There's sort of the one between the brother and sister. There's the horned boy who's woken up. There's this other element of this creature running through the forest. There's Hazel's whole nighttime life that she slowly finds out about. Then there's the romance between Hazel and Jack. There's a lot of things going on. And the cover does a great job, again, of sort of portraying that without making it obvious. That's basically it. It comes down to composition, title, interest, tone, genre. All of these elements need to come together. They need to have a great color scheme. They need to have the perfect font. There's a lot that goes into it. I would definitely recommend to anybody who is self-publishing to hire a designer, because honestly, there's some really great designers that only charge a few $100, and it is so worth it. It makes all the difference in the world. There is nothing more amazing than a beautiful book cover, and there's nothing more tragic than a horrible one. So if you are a writer, you owe it to your book to give it a beautiful cover. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.